7:05. And my name is Greg Clausen. I'm the acting presider until the election of officers, which is item 5 on the agenda. To begin, I'd like to welcome you to our first meeting of the council as we work to recommend University of Minnesota Regent candidates to the legislature. On behalf of the Minnesota legislature, the University of Minnesota, and the citizens of Minnesota, thank you for your service to the RCAT. We currently have 14 RCAT members with 10 openings that we need to be filled by the House Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader. And I'm sure you can understand right now they're rather busy as the election becomes closer. Currently, we have those 17 applicants that have applied to serve on the RCAT. And since we have all served together in the past, I'm going to delay introductions before we have a full complement of people, and that way we'll be able to meet new members as well as remember the people that are currently serving. So at this point, I'm going to ask Ms. Olson as the secretary, would you please conduct a roll call?
Chair Clausen.
Here.
Member Andalchek.
Here.
Member Bernardi. Here. Member Daniels. Member DeWayde. Member Farrell. Here. Member Hill.
Here.
Member Jessen.
Here.
Member Mohammed. Member Ojala.
Here.
Senator Rarick.
Here.
Member Reynoso.
Here.
Member Thielfolt.
Here.
Member Winkler.
Here.
I did hear, I believe.
We did say here. 11 members present.
Okay, we do have a quorum, and we'll move ahead. Our first order of business is to approve the January 10th to January 13th, 2023 meeting minutes. Members have been provided online access to the minutes, and we need to approve those. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If there are no corrections, the minutes stand approved. And I'd like to use the presiders. Well, according to Roberts, you don't have to, but no, you just stand approved since there's no objections. I'd like to use the presider's prerogative and move to agenda number 6, the presentation from the regents. Regent Janie Mayron, Board of Regents Chair, and Mr. Brian Steeves, Executive Director, Office of the Board of Regents, are with us today to share their thoughts on what characteristics and expertise make for favorable board outcomes. So welcome, and if you'd like to take your seat. Thank you. You know, before we start, I'd like to thank Regent Chair Mayron for her leadership and service to the University of Minnesota. I greatly appreciate you stepping forward in that role, and I know that it's not easy at times, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Clausen. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today with my colleague, Brian Steeves. I think most of you know me, but I will take a moment to briefly introduce myself. I'm Janie Mayron, and I've been a member of the Board of Regents since 2019, and I currently serve as chair of the board. Before my board service, I was a federal magistrate judge and a lawyer specializing in civil litigation and mediation. I'm also a 2-time Gopher alum. I received both my undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Minnesota, and I also served as president of the Alumni Association. Earlier this month, the board's Governance and Policy Committee reviewed and discussed the selection criteria that the RCAC used in the 2023 cycle. I understand you were sent a link to watch the video of that conversation to hear the perspectives of my board colleagues. And if you haven't had an opportunity to do so, I hope you will, because we had a very robust discussion around the table. We also had the benefit of the chair and vice chair attending of RCAC, Chair Clausen and Vice Chair Farrell, and to get their input and to have a dialogue with them as well about characteristics and expertise. Today, I'll build on that conversation and amplify my own thoughts on the characteristics that make a good regent. Brian Steeves, the board's executive director, will add some remarks on the role of the governing board and some of the board's current priorities. After we wrap up, we'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have of us. As I noted, when Chair Clausen and Vice Chair Farrell attended our meeting a few weeks ago, I think there are many qualities, backgrounds, and experiences that make a good regent. And these are reflected in your current criteria, which you have before you. I will just say, if you find people who meet the criteria that are set out by your committee, you are going to be recommending terrific people to the legislature. Among those, I'd like to underscore a few key attributes that merit strong consideration, in my opinion. First of all, just generally, it's important to remember that regents are trustees who are charged with holding, preserving, and fulfilling the land-grant mission of our state's greatest institution. Serving on the Board of Regents, like any other higher education governing board, is a balancing act, and one that is carried out under very close scrutiny. Our code of conduct requires regents to uphold their fiduciary duties, to be diligent, and to carry out their duties in good faith, to be loyal to the university and its mission, and to adhere to the laws and policies that govern the board, the state, and the land. Likewise, our code of conduct recognizes, and I'm quoting from this, regents bring to their task varied backgrounds and expertise, but at the same time requires them to put aside their personal interests and to keep the welfare of the entire university, not just a particular constituency, at all times paramount. That is absolutely critical in my mind to have a successful board and successful governance of our institution. We need regents who will act in the best interests of the university and the people of Minnesota and set aside their respective bias or perspective or experience when necessary to do what is best for the interests of the state as a whole and the university as a whole. Regents need to be masters of nuance, because in my experience, the issues we face are often multidimensional. Rarely are there decisions that are black and white. We operate in the world of gray, where reasonable people can differ on a solution to a particular matter. The board needs regents who are adept at seeing the overall picture and are committed to collectively shaping the future. Being a regent requires an open mind, a critical eye, skill at being a team player, having good judgment, and time. Time to follow and learn about higher education nationally and about the university in particular. Time to engage in firsthand engagement activities beyond the regular meeting schedule. Time to prepare for and attend all full slate of meetings, including special meetings. And time to take on leadership roles. Regents also need to make time to get to know and understand the president and her leadership team. The board depends on the president to serve as a strong leader, to implement our vision, and to manage the university's day-to-day operations. While we must hold the president accountable to fulfill those responsibilities, we must also trust and support the president and establish conditions that help her succeed, and that takes time. Collectively, there are many skill sets, backgrounds, and expertise that exist across the board, and we ask that you consider those that will be needed by the incoming regents to ensure we have a well-rounded board. For example, as I said, my own background is as a lawyer and a judge, and I have expertise in mediation. And that has been very valuable to my colleagues and I believe to the university. For example, as we address litigation either by the university or against the university. It has been very helpful to have someone like Regent Davenport with the background and experience in higher education, administration, even though she came from a different system. Regent Tarabi brought and brings to us a strong background in community ventures and organizations. We think it's important that you find candidates who will bring similar expertise to this board so that they can complement the remaining expertise that will be on the board for those who still are on it. My colleagues would agree that we rely on those different perspectives in our discussion, and while we may not always agree from the outset on a particular matter, we work through those differences and in the end reach better decisions because they take into account the different perspectives. We would therefore ask that you seek those who ensure we will continue to have a well-rounded board with complementary experiences and perspectives. I believe it is important to have previous leadership experience and for a candidate to understand the difference between governance and management. As Regent Wheeler stated at our last meeting, we need, quote, people who can get their arms around things without their fingers inextricably in them, end of quote. It is also paramount that we have regents who are committed to engaging with our students, faculty, staff, alumni, the legislature, and many others who love the university across our campuses and the state, and then working together as a board to find the best solutions that the university for its long-term success. Being a regent, as I said, is, and I will say, is challenging and it's rewarding. And more than ever, it requires a very thick skin. For every decision we make, there will be critics of that decision and they will be very vocal. Regents must be prepared to withstand that criticism. I can tell you that in my experience as a regent, almost completing my 6th year, of the probably thousands and thousands of emails I have received over my tenure, less than 5 have complimented myself or the board in what we have done. Meaning we hear from people who are unhappy with our decisions. Regents do not necessarily hear about the good things that they did for the university. Kind of like what's happening in the press. We often are above the line because of something that happened that people are critical of. It's much rarer for the press to tout all the wonderful things that the university brings to the state and to the community at large. I hope as you examine the applications of potential candidates and interview them, that you will ask for examples in their past that evidence the various characteristics you are seeking. It is one thing for an applicant to say, yes, I will have an open mind. Yes, I will bring a critical eye. Yes, I am a team player. Yes, I have good judgment and I'm committed to engagement. But it is another for the candidate to ground that answer in their past and to show you that they indeed have walked the talk. It's not just talk. So I hope you will probe them for examples that will satisfy you that you have found someone who has the characteristics that you think are appropriate as a potential regent. And lastly, I know that at the end of the day, you and the others here will be selected by a party, Republican or Democratic Party. But more than ever, I ask that you set aside your party affiliation as you consider candidates, as you interview them and vet them. And to select candidates to interview and to present to the legislature who are qualified by way of background, experience, good judgment, good governance, and a commitment to the university as a whole. As you all know, it's really a privilege to be engaged in this type of public service with the university's impact on the people in our state, the health and well-being of our economy, and its global research impact. It is truly inspiring to be engaged in this work, and I look forward to watching the process unfold as you select initial candidates for interview and ultimately the selection of regents by the legislature in 2025. Thank you again for inviting myself and Executive Director Steves to be here today and to share our thoughts and the collective thoughts of my colleagues. I know that recruiting and screening regent candidates is a big job, and I want to say thank you for your service. We so much appreciate it. I hope my perspective is helpful in this process, and after Brian shares his thoughts, as I said, we'll be open for any questions and hopefully we can answer them for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steves.
All right, well, thank you. As was noted, I serve the board as Executive Director and Corporate Secretary, and I've now served the board for about 15 years. And so I've seen a long history of these regent elections and of regents grappling with many of the issues that Regent Mayron was sharing. I'm just delighted that Regent Mayron read all 5 of those emails I sent you.
Yeah, right.
I wanted to share a little bit about some of the priorities that the board currently has, some of the current issues that are consuming time and attention from the board, because it will give you a flavor for the types of things the board is engaged with. And then also just share with you a little bit, kind of a shorthand for what is governance, because it's difficult sometimes for folks to get their arms around that. So some of the priorities, and I'll just note that these priorities evolve over time and some of the wording around them evolves, but each summer the board has a retreat, and part of the outcome of that retreat is for the board to set some priorities that guide its own work in the coming year. And really they do that in collaboration with the president, and then collectively the president and board work to advance those priorities throughout the year. So the current year, the priorities: number one, to launch and develop a new system-wide strategic plan. The current strategic plan is expiring, and so we're at a stage where we both have a new president as well as the need to establish a new strategic plan for the organization. And so that's a big amount of work. It'll take pretty much the whole year to work through that and develop that with the stakeholder consultations and all the other things that need to be balanced as you try to advance a plan. Second is to begin to develop a financially sustainable plan for investing in the university's workforce, both attracting, retaining, and rewarding the talented faculty and staff who do the work of the university. It is a very people-intensive operation, and as budgets are constrained, it becomes increasingly difficult to attract and retain talent, and so that is a board priority. Third is to optimize the system. I think there's a strong belief, and there has been for some time, that the 5 campuses and then 10 research and outreach centers and many other facilities and operations of the university can be greater than the sum of their parts, and there are ways to leverage greater coordination and collaboration across all of the entities and physical spaces of the university to really optimize the operation, and that's a priority. Fourth, and this is kind of in a couple parts, is really around health sciences and academic medicine. It's to articulate a strategic plan for our 6 health sciences schools, as well as our Rochester campus, which focuses on health sciences as well, and collectively how those colleges and schools are going to serve the state. But then also to really define the next chapter in the university's clinical partnerships. And as that unfolds, it will obviously impact and shape how the university delivers on its mission to improve the health of Minnesotans. Fifth, to continue and expand the university's efforts around environmental sustainability. It's been a leader in reducing its energy consumption, and in a number of other ways has really demonstrated how we can both achieve the things we need to achieve and do it with less of an impact on the environment. And then finally, to better communicate the impact of the university and its positive outcomes and benefits for all Minnesotans. And so those are some of the priorities that the current board established this last summer. It's shaping and guiding the agendas that it's working through this year. It will serve as input into the strategic plan as well, and really gives you a little bit of a flavor, like I said, of the current things that the board is working on. Then I'll just turn to governance for a second. I think it's very difficult for folks to encapsulate or try to quickly define, well, what is governance? What's a governing board? What do they do? People often revert to the tasks. So they'll say, well, they hire the president, or they set the budget, or they set tuition. And those are things that the board does, certainly. But I think governance can better be defined in terms of what, and the way I describe it to regents as they join the board is, it's repetitively answering 4 questions. And that's really the heart of governance. So those 4 questions are very simple, but very difficult to answer. And you have to answer them over and over and over, depending on what the topic is. So the first question is, where are we going? The board fundamentally has to work that out with the president and figure out, what is the goal? What's the objective? What are we trying to accomplish in this space? How are we fulfilling our mission in this space? What does that look like? Second, who is responsible for getting us there? The board ultimately, all authority is vested with the board, but it delegates out authority. And you have to decide where those delegations are and where the accountability lies. And it's the board's job to figure that out and determine where the board needs to be more hands-on, and where it needs to let go a little bit more, and how to optimize that relationship. And it changes across time. So that's why you need to keep answering that question in different ways across different topics. Third question, are we making adequate progress? Ultimately, it's the board's responsibility to determine whether progress is being made. They need to know, does tomorrow look different than today? And if so, by what measures? And it doesn't need to be all quantitative measures. It can be qualitative as well. But you need to know if you've made progress against the goals and objectives that you've set forth. And the board is the entity that needs to be monitoring that. And then fourth, what risks might impact success? This is an area where board members in particular bring great value, because they are outside of the university and they have a diverse array of experience and backgrounds, and they are able to see things differently than sometimes people inside the organization are able to see it. So they can ask questions about, well, have you thought about this? Or what about this opportunity? Or any number of other ways that the board is able to identify risks of either acting and failing at something, or missing an opportunity through inaction that would really be beneficial to the university. And so those risks either way are important items that the board raises and answers a question of. So those are the 4 questions. When you think about every item on the board's agenda and you apply these 4 questions to them, that's governance. That's what the board is doing. It's working that out, but you're doing it in a public meeting with a group of 12 people who are all brought together with passion for the university, but maybe with differing backgrounds, differing views. And so you have to work through these things, and you work through them in concert with the president and the administration. And so ultimately, that's the job that you're applying for. It's someone who can approach a very complicated, decentralized, large organization, but pierce through that with these kinds of questions repeatedly and get to the heart of what it is that the board is trying to accomplish in serving the state of Minnesota with this great organization. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any members have questions?
While you're thinking of it, one thing I didn't mention, but I think would be good to discuss with potential candidates when you're interviewing them, is to make sure that they understand that their decision-making process as a regent is going to be different likely different than anything they have experienced before unless they've been in the public sector and subject to the open meeting law. And getting used to where you're in a where as soon as you have a quorum, that you're giving notice of your meeting in advance, the press will be there to take down anything you're saying. You will, so just making a decision in an open forum like that and wrestling with some very difficult and complex questions is a different process than many of us, including myself, we're used to. Some of you are coming from different public agencies, or like Representative Bernardi from the legislature, you're used to it, but many of your regents are not. And making sure they're aware of that they're about to encounter a process of decision-making that is going to be very different than any process they've been involved in before, I think is worth bringing that to their attention and making sure they have a comfort level with that, which of course they'll tell you they will. So I encourage you to get examples of how they are thinking they will address it, but it will be something different for them. Anyway.
Thank you for that comment. We're going to talk a little bit later about that, so thank you. Questions? Comments?
Sure. Regent Mayron and Mr. Steves, you know the makeup of your current board, and you also know, you understand the issues that you're currently dealing with and potentially the ones that are coming down. If you could guide us towards where we might be looking in particular areas or experiences or fields, occupations or experience, if there was some of those clues you could give us of what we should be looking for in terms of what might be helpful for the future of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents.
Thank you, Committee Member Jessen. And Brian, be sure to chime in as well. I would say the healthcare issue, the healthcare, our academic health sciences, where we're going, as you all know, we're in the process of negotiating with Fairview Hospital, but figuring out the direction of what our medical contribution is going to be to the state. I think that's going to remain an ongoing issue for some time. Fortunately, we do have a retired physician, a current physician, and a nurse on our board. So I don't feel like we need someone in addition personally to lend that expertise or that lens to make sure the right questions are getting asked. But I do think bringing in people who have financial backgrounds and a business background, I think is really critical as we are addressing that issue. And of course, there are many other, I mean, at the end of the day, we're funded by what we can receive from the legislature, what we can do by tuition and other sources. But trying to deal with the financial implications of everything we do, I think having board members that would bring that expertise would be highly helpful. I mentioned on the litigation side, I think that would be very helpful to have a lawyer who comes from a litigation background. We have some huge issues. For example, as you all know, with the athletics and the suits that have been brought, not saying any, including myself, have the expertise on how to solve that problem, but somebody who has an eye towards negotiation and the types of things that go on in a legal suit or a lawsuit, I think would be helpful as well. As I look at our priorities, I think agriculture is so important to the state of Minnesota. And bringing in, we do have one regent who actually, Regent Hipsch, who brings that background and also financial background, but I think adding to that would be very, very helpful as well. And the environmental sustainability priority is huge. To me, it's probably personally the most important issue, because if we don't solve what's going on in our environment, we won't be here to do any of the other priorities, and the impact on the state and the world is huge. So someone with that kind of background and a commitment to that, I think would be, and an eye towards that personally, I think would be very helpful. Our president's very attuned to it, but having some of that outside expertise, as Brian talked about, asking questions from the outside, bringing a different lens, I think is very helpful to the university. So those are ones that come to mind for me.
And I guess I would just add, and I think I echo all of those things, I would just add that they, whatever background they bring, they will be most successful if they approach the work as a generalist, not as somebody who's a specialist in a particular area, because ultimately all 12 regents need to be engaged in all of the issues that the university encounters. And where we've seen regents struggle the most is when they want to only be in one narrow space. And that, the board may engage in that one narrow space, 10% of the time, but the 90% of the time it's engaged in other issues. And so it's important for someone who can flex across that, who can both bring some expertise on a particular topic or with a background, but can then flex across and is comfortable being a generalist in a complicated organization.
And that goes back to earlier we were talking about, the good news is, and rightfully so, you're gonna look for people with expertise or experience that you think would enhance the board. And that's critical. But at the same time, each individual needs to know that despite that experience and despite that expertise, there will be times when they need to, that's not what's being called upon, or they need to set that aside, or they need to acknowledge it and say, okay, but now I need to hear all of the perspectives and take them all into account, even though I may have a specialized expertise in that area. And so I think Brian's point about, yes, expertise, but at the end of the day, because your fiduciary duty is to the university as a whole, you still have to approach it more as a generalist.
I really appreciate those comments, and I think in my years on the RCAT, we've recognized that. We've tried to look at candidates, give that broad spectrum of expertise and background, because we know there's not an element in the state of Minnesota that's not touched by the University of Minnesota. And you really need a diverse group of people to guide the institution and make a difference for our people. So thank you. Thanks for those comments. Other questions or comments?
Mr.
Mr.
Chair,
Adams asks.
Regent Mayron and Executive Director Steves, if you were to outline three problems, the biggest three issues, the biggest three challenges that need to fix in the next year or 2 years, so we're trying to fit people based on our experience as a diverse board. Could you narrow it down to three specific areas, which are your worst nightmares right now that you're trying to solve?
Boy, so you're gonna get my off-the-cuff reaction, solving our commitment to the state to improve the health of the state, and to train our physicians to provide healthcare across the state, to make it accessible, that's huge. And the university is so well poised to do it, has such a depth of expertise, but it's a difficult space as we try to, we're gonna need help from the legislature. We cannot do this alone. And making sure we're getting adequate help is gonna be critical. And of course, the legislature, our governor, they have many competing interests. But that to me, putting that issue, not to rest, but getting a positive trajectory on that, I think is one of the biggest issues that we have. Addressing our backlog in the buildings, it's just stunning how, we're talking about $500 million of buildings that are in need of repair or need to be torn down or are not usable. And you can't provide education within walls if the walls can't sustain the individuals, the faculty, the students who are coming into them. And that is huge. And trying to find a way to finance that with or without the partnership of the legislature, that is just a huge issue. It's been an ongoing issue, but it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In some senses is overwhelming, I think. And the last one, is how do you deal with finite funding? Every June, we have to make the most difficult decision that we're called upon, which is how do we pay faculty and employees appropriately, and how do we keep tuition and education affordable and accessible? And I will tell you, I hoped there was a magic bullet on this and just somebody wasn't figuring it out, but there is no magic bullet on this. We are fortunate that the reality is that the sticker price at the university is not what students pay. And I think President Cunningham stated at a presentation that I heard her speak at, that in fact, we are the dollars that a student spends at the university is the lowest of any higher education institution within the state. That's not how she put it. But in other words, at the end of the day, between the various scholarships that we're able to provide and through different programs through the state, in fact, we can bring the tuition down to lower than any other institution in the state, private or public, which is huge. But it's finite. I mean, we have finite dollars. So trying to continue to make this a financially sustainable institution, huge issue.
I just have one question on that. So is what you're saying that at the university would be a better price value than, say, the Minnesota State College or University system? I'm just comparing the two because the numbers that I've looked at, I mean, it looks like we have a really good opportunity for our students in the state, but it's the first time I heard that the university would be a better financial investment for the student.
I don't think.
It's at certain dollar amounts, so I think it's below 80,000 or below 100,000 family income, and so, but at the lowest levels of family income, the University of Minnesota, with the financial aid that the university has invested in, is actually less expensive than any other four-year institution, public or private, in the
Thank you
state.
for verifying.
Thanks for that clarification. Yeah.
Great answer.
And I don't mean to suggest that the state system isn't providing the same value we are. I'm simply saying this is a huge juggernaut for all of us to address, which is how do we keep education affordable and at the same time continue to attract the kind of faculty and employees that we attract to make it the outstanding institution we want it to be.
Thank you.
Ms. Bernardi.
Yes, I could ask both of you, but I'm going to direct it first to Mr. Steves. Over the years, your 15 years, have you seen what percentage of regents have been able to fulfill their commitment? I mean, obviously, they stay their tenure, they serve it, but how many have a challenge in doing the homework and doing the time, so to speak? Is that, it's 100%, or where does that fall?
Good luck.
Well, I would say that every region I've worked with is exceptional. No, every region every single region I've ever encountered has been passionate about the University of Minnesota, but there's a bell curve just like in any other population of people, right? There's going to be a group in the middle who are, putting in the work and time. There's going to be some at the upper end who are putting in, well above what others are, and there's going to be some who are putting in less time and effort. And that's just the nature of populations across time, any groups of people. I think ultimately, though, what's one of the things that's fascinating, and this is both through a function of elections, but also individual choices that have been happening, and this is actually one of the challenges. We, right now, do not have any second-term regents on the Board of Regents, and we will not have any second-term regents after this next election either. We're going to have 3 election cycles in a row where we've had full turnover of 4 seats. And so what that means is there is very little institutional knowledge that gets carried forward among members of the board. And I think that's happening for a couple of reasons. One is just the politics of this process and of you know, the nature of this seat. But the other is that this has become an increasingly difficult job to do. The criticism that Regent Mayron talked about is intense, and it's instantaneous, and it's relentless. And there's a desire to continually elevate issues to the Board of Regents that should be handled at, you know, a department chair level or a dean or a, you know, 18 other levels before it goes to the board. And I think it's just very difficult. Everything instantly becomes an issue because it's posted on social media somewhere, or all of these things. And so regents, I think, who are earning the sum of $0 for all of these hours of service that they are putting in, are finding it very challenging to be in an environment where they're getting such intense scrutiny and criticism all the time, constantly, for 6 years straight. And I think a lot of times people say, you know what, that's enough. But the cost is that across time, when the regent election is held, our most senior regents will have been on the board for 4 years. That's not very long to learn a nearly $5 billion operation and understand the long-term issues and you know, challenges that are associated with it. Higher ed governance was designed such that the board would be there long-term and the presidents would be there shorter term. We're finding now that presidents are there longer than board members sometimes.
And I will say we are trying to figure out ways on how to remove obstacles so that we know are there. For example, we're looking at different ways to engage with the community to make sure that they can meet us and greet us and share their thoughts, apart from blasts of emails that we get or communications on social media where we can't dialogue with them. They're just vetting their frustration about a particular decision that was made that they didn't like. So we're trying to address those kinds of issues. And we're trying even within our meeting schedule. We recognize probably, I think half of our board are still full-time employed. I mean, they have other jobs. So we're trying to create schedules that will accommodate their need for a break during the board meeting day so they can go handle those phone calls. They don't need to leave the room in order to address some work schedule. You know, the good news is we have a number of individuals like myself who are retired, but, and that's great, but you need that broad spectrum of, as we talk about, expertise and viewpoint that comes from different generations. It's so critical. So we're trying to manage as best we can within the regions. How do we make sure that we are making it as accessible to our fellow regions and that they're able to engage as much as they can? The ability to meet virtually has helped a lot, because then we can do special meetings and things like that, where not everybody has to be in the room. That's been huge in terms of addressing members who are coming from greater Minnesota, or those who are working, who all of a sudden on a dime need to be participating in a very critical special meeting. And so, you know, in my term, in answer to your question, Representative Bernardi, I think Brian is right. There are some who participate less, not because they don't want to. I really think it's because the demands of their situation, their personal situation, work or otherwise, just do not permit them to participate as fully as they would have liked to. And others can give and have been giving well beyond what others might be able to give because they can.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments? Well, seeing none, I'm gonna just have a brief recess so we can say thank you as you leave, and again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very helpful. To our agenda, we're on item number 3, which is. I call the RCAC back to order. I just thought it was important that we had a few minutes to thank our guests today. So back to item number 3 on our agenda, which is a review of the RCAC objectives. And the RCAC objectives are defined in Minnesota statute 137.0245, which is the Regent Candidate Advisory Council. And you can find that document on our website if you'd like to review it more in length. But I think interesting to really point out a few things about that statute. It outlines the RCAC establishment, its membership, its duties, recommendations, and support services. The RCAC's core responsibility is to determine criteria for identifying and recruiting candidates for membership to the University of Minnesota Board of Regents and making recommendations of at least 2, but not more than 4 candidates to the Joint Legislative Higher Education Committee by January 15th. It was talked about a little bit here, but the Regent terms expiring in 2025 include Congressional District 5. We have 2 at-large positions, and we have a student at-large position. I believe, the at-large positions in the past have kind of gathered the most people that put in their application. So I'm hoping that we'll have a large number of applicants to choose from and interview this time around. Moving on to item number 4, change in the RCAT statutes, the public meeting requirements. And there have been 2 statutory changes to the Regent Candidate Advisory Board language, and I'd like Ms. Olson to review those changes at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first change was just related to membership. It just altered the 12 members appointed by the Senate, and now they are appointed by the majority leader rather than the subcommittee on committees of the Committee on Rules and Administration, which is always fun to say. The second change is related to open meeting requirements. It added subdivision 6, which states that the RCAC is explicitly subject to Minnesota Statutes 3.055, which is the legislative open meeting law. You may recall that we previously, the council previously operated under 13D due to advice provided to the council because the statute was silent on the open meeting law. So this is a little bit different. Under 3.055, meetings must be open to the public when both a quorum is present and action is taken. It allows for members to participate fully remotely in meetings via interactive television, including video conferencing. And compliance with 3.055 is enforced through the legislature's internal rules and procedures. There is a memo in your materials today from Nathan Hopkins that is an update on RCAC procedures. You've seen a similar memo before, but this reflects the changes of the open meeting requirements as the council is now subject to Minnesota Statutes 3.055. This also includes that section on data practices, and just a reminder to all that that's really about the applicants, that they'll be providing confidential private information through their application form to the council for their review, but that's not public. So it's always just a good reminder if anyone asks you about, information of applicants or who applied or to see their applications, to just forward such requests to me, and then I will make sure the proper public information is provided to them. So just an update, and that memo is in your packet.
Any questions regarding the change? Just want to make one point that the RCAT is not required to take public testimony, however. We are not a group that accepts public testimony. We are a group that makes recommendations to the legislature for the Board of Regents. So I just wanted to clarify that although there are changes, that particular issue is not one that has changed. Moving on to our election of officers. At this time, I'd like to open up the floor for nominations to include the chair, and then we have 2 vice chair positions. So at this time, do we have any nominations for the RCAT chair?
Well, sure. I would like to nominate Greg Clausen to renew as our chair, thankfully, hopefully.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Okay, seeing none, we do need to vote on this. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
opposed? Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot, we do have people that are online with us. So would you please come online so you can vote with us? So I'm going to redo the vote. So those of you that are online, if you could vote as well. So those in favor of having Greg Clausen continue as chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay.
Quick question,
Yes.
do we not need a second on it?
You know, I do not believe that in my, that I see that we need one.
Motion
No.
and a second.
No,
Yeah.
am I correct?
Can I second
You like to
it? Can I
second
second it
everything,
just
I
in case?
Just in case Connie seconds.
All right, Connie is seconding that. I don't want to redo the vote though, but we do have a second. Thank you. All right. We do have, again, the need for 2 vice chairs. I'd like to open up the nominations for the first of the 2 vice chairs. Do we have a nomination? Yes, Senator Representative Bernard.
I'd like to nominate Barb Farrell.
Okay. Very good. Any other nominations?
I'm gonna second it just to be,
Thank you. All right. We have a second. Seeing no other nominations, let's vote. And again, those of you online, those of you in favor of Barb Farrell, assuming the vice chair position, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Congratulations, Barb.
Thank you.
And now we have a second vice chair position I'd like to fill. So nominations are open. Do we have nominations for a second vice chair position?
I'd like to nominate Ed Reynoso.
There's been a nomination
Wait a
of
minute.
Ed Reynoso. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a second. Those in favor of supporting Ed as the second vice chair, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Congratulations, Ed.
There you go.
glad you came.
Very good. Moving on to item number 7, we have had a group that, a committee that's been working already, selecting criteria and document review, and we would like a committee report by that. Barb Farrell chaired the selection criteria document review committee, along with committee members Matt Hill, Senator Rarick, and Ed Reynoso. So Chair Farrell, we would welcome your report at this time.
Thank you. Our committee met on the 22nd, and there are two documents that we review, the selection criteria and the online application. We had the benefit for the selection criteria document for having attended, Chair Clausen and I attended the governance committee that Regent Marin talked about, and so we had the benefit of having their input to the selection criteria document that we had used. I was a returning member to the selection criteria, to the document review committee, and I recall in our last rotation, we did spend a lot of time sort of fine-tuning and doing our best effort for the selection criteria document. If you've taken a good look at it, it's got 16 criteria, and I think it's well said and a good tool for all of us to use. We did recommend in our document review committee 2 small changes, tweaks to that document. You all should have it in your packet or would have received it ahead of time. I will tell you that those 2 tweaks are in the selection criteria document in the first paragraph. The last sentence, we refer to the president and / his/her leadership team. And we just felt like it says the same thing to delete his/her in today's vernacular, where we're all very careful and about using pronouns and what people select. So it says the same thing without saying his/her, so we just kind of cleaned that up. And then also, of the 16 criteria, criteria number 12 was the only criteria that, in parentheses, described an example of what that meant. And we felt that we didn't need that level of detail in that criteria. So we deleted it. It says the same thing without that. So as a committee, those are the changes we would make to the document.
Thank you very much. Can we have a motion to approve the committee report?
So moved.
Mr. Hill, the second, please.
Second.
Second, very good. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Very good. Committee report has been accepted. So we will adopt then the criteria that has been presented. And we'll be referring to that as we move through the process. Moving on to item 8, committee review and assignments. We do have 3 additional committees: recruitment, references, interview process and questions, and candidate orientation. Committee chairs, people that volunteer, this is a volunteer committee assignment. They become part of the executive committee. The responsibilities of the committee are defined in the RCAT committee document that is online. In the past, we've asked for volunteers to serve in these positions. Maybe it would be good just to have a quick overview of those positions so we know. The recruitment, and that's something that actually will take place starting tomorrow. Because there are things the chair does to initiate that as well. But we need to prepare a recruitment plan engaging individuals, organizations, and the media. And Sam is here from the Alumni Association, and I would encourage people who step forward here to really work with Sam. They are a great resource for this, as are others. I know I've had a meeting with a candidate already. I'm meeting another candidate tomorrow that has expressed an interest. So each of you is a recruiter as you go out and think about this, people that you feel may be just a good person to serve on the Board of Regents. So that is one of the groups of committee. The reference group, the reference check interview process committee, again, we will do reference checks on all of the people that we are recommending to move forward through the process, and we need to have people that volunteer for that. And then the candidate orientation, we need to prepare the region nominees to proceed with the legislative process. And I think a lot of people perhaps don't know how daunting a process that is. Getting appointments with people that serve in the House and the Senate and sharing their candidacy with them. I think there's some things that perhaps we can do to help with that. So with that, do we have any volunteers for each of these 3 committees? So we just need a chair first, and then we will have a document that we'll send around, and if you'd like to serve on that committee, you can just sign up. Yes,
I would be willing to serve on the recruitment committee.
okay. So we have 1 chair, thank you.
He said serve.
I heard him say serve, but since he spoke up. Oh, are you willing to do that?
Yes,
Very good. Thank you. Any volunteer for the reference check interview process? The chair of that committee.
I'll do it.
Very good. Thank
Yay,
you.
Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. And then the candidate orientation.
I could probably take that one.
Senator Rarick, very good. Thank you so much. I think it's helpful to have someone that has served in the legislature to head that one up, so I appreciate you stepping forward. Thank you. And then. Okay. All right, we do need a formal motion to accept the people that have stepped forward for these positions.
As executive committee members.
As executive committee members, yes. We just have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Hill, thank you.
second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Very good. Appreciate people volunteering for that, and we'll pass that document around so people could sign up for that. Moving on to item number 9, looking at our 2024, 2025 cycle of activities. And I'd just like to point out a couple things there to emphasize as we're going forward. Friday, December 6th, the Regent candidate application deadline, so the applications close at that time. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the process really will start tomorrow with a number of things that we will initiate. And then I would encourage people to meet with Sam and kind of from that end. So Sam, if you could just stick around afterward a little bit, thank you. So that's an important date, the 6th. We will be meeting then on December 13th. We'll review applications and select candidates to interview. The interviews will take place January 6th through the 10th, and as you know, they generally are all-day interviews that we will use during that week. And hopefully on the 10th, we'll be voting for the final candidates that we would recommend to the Joint Legislative Higher Education Committee. And then we do have a deadline of January 15th to submit our recommendations and our criteria to the Joint Higher Education Legislative Committee. I would like a motion to adopt the proposed RCAD schedule for 2024 and 2025. And can I have a motion, please? So moved. So moved, Representative Bernardi.
Second.
Second, couple seconds, Julian also. All those in favor of adopting the RCAD schedule, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Okay, motion passes. Other items as determined by the chair, I'd just like to recommend that you've been provided some documents to review online. And I'd like to point out a couple of them. One would be the guidelines for member conduct, if you would please review that. And then the private data discussion that we discussed in the open meeting. There's a little information there that I'd like you to take a look at. Have it is online as well. And if you do have questions, our vice chairs and myself would be more than happy to spend time reviewing any questions you might have. With that, any other business people would like to bring forward at this time? Well, having no other business before the council, may I have a motion to adjourn and also a second? So moved. So moved, second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.